Okay, recording has started. This session is being recorded. By participating in this session, you are consenting to the recording, retention, and use of this session. No other recording of this session is allowed, including the use of AI note-taking. So thank you and welcome everyone to the April Division of Adult Education monthly webinar. Oops, sorry about that. You can see that. Okay, why is that not moving? Go. Okay, today we're going to start with a quick division staff update, and then I will turn it over to three of your colleagues to talk about how they incorporate digital literacy skills into instruction. And then after they are done, I have a couple of items to cover, reminders and requests, and then some tentative information about 25-26 grants. Okay, so I'm very excited to say that the Division of Adult Education, for the first time in a very long time, it has at least our federally funded positions we have a full complement. So we now have 9 people in the division. Shelley Brown is our new advisor. She started back on April 7th. We're very happy to have her. Here on the slide is a list of the agencies that she will be taking to serve as their advisor. She's going to be working with the advisors that currently have these agencies over the next couple of weeks to get transitioned. Okay, and Shelley, if you would like to turn on your camera and say hi to everyone, that would be great.
Hi, everybody. I look forward to meeting each and every one of you and working with your agencies.
To see if I can move this over. There we go. Okay. So welcome, Shelley. We are very glad to have you. Okay, I will now turn it over to your colleagues to do their presentations.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our presenters for today. They will discuss best practices as well as other techniques and strategies involving implementing digital literacy skills into their instruction and other ways into their program overall. So for the presenters today, we have DelCo Literacy, formerly known as Delaware County Literacy Council. So congratulations to your rebrand. We also have Seneca Highlands IU 9, as well as Lincoln IU 12 that will be presenting today. So up first is the staff from DelCo Literacy. So if you want to go ahead and get started with your presentation, that will be great.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Chandra Wooders, Director of Student Support at DelCo Literacy. So just to start off, some of the things that we did in the beginning was to look for additional funding for digital literacy, just because of the world that we live in today, trying to prepare our students for, to be successful in classes and also as they transition, from Delaware County. Can you go to the next one? So these are 3 of the grants that we received. And I've always tell people, look in your community for agencies that might want to fund digital literacy. So we had the SIGRA, which is Delaware County Interactive Gaming Revenue Authority. They gave us a grant for improving digital literacy skills. The Rosenthal Family Foundation also was another one that helped us with was this funding for digital literacy. So everyone kind of knows Everybody Loves Raymond. The actress Monica on there was the wife of the Rosenthal. And then we had AARP Foundation, which helped anyone who was 50 and older. So with these three combined grants, we were able to provide digital literacy workshops for anyone 18 and older who also lived in Delaware County, also including our students. Okay, the next one. Some of the topics that we taught. So we had 3 different type of digital literacy topics. Some were courses, and a course was 75 to 90 minutes, and that meant twice a week. A lecture was just a one-time event, and that was about 60 to 90 minutes. Workshops were 75 to 90 minutes. So some of the courses that we did teach was Computer Essentials, Introduction to Digital Culture. So that one was very popular. We had that one a couple times last year. Chromebook Essentials, and that was important to us because we do use Chromebooks with our students, so that helped them to learn how to, become familiar with using a Chromebook for their class, for their homework, or anything they needed to do. iPad Essentials, and then the phone today, protecting your personal information online, cloud storage, P2P payments, and that was like if you made a payment with on your eBay account or some type of online account. Google Workspace, Google Maps. And then our workshops were affordable connectivity program. And that was important to our students because a lot of them couldn't afford internet. So at that time, that gave you a discounted rate for getting the internet. Connecting to the internet, exploring and downloading apps, finding information online, Gmail tips and tricks, staying safe online. So another popular one was that one like finding information online, which was very helpful to our students because sometimes they weren't familiar with the area they lived in. They may have wanted to find a movie, a store, or something like that. And then there are additional supportive services. So with some of our grants, it gave us the funding that we could purchase hotspots, and we also have Chromebooks for our students to borrow. Our only guideline with that is that our students are with us for 12 hours before they can borrow a Chromebook. And then we had drop-in labs several times a week. Some of our students didn't have a quiet place at home where they could get on their online class, so they would come into the building, use a Chromebook, and log into their class. We also have some students who stay and do their homework, and then they could also drop in to find out about new technologies like how to use Zoom, how to use Google Classroom. We had a total of 342 adults who received instruction in digital literacy classes and workshops in 3 years since we started our digital literacy program at DelCo Literacy.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Zacharshemny. I'm the Director of Adult Education at DelCo Literacy. So while Chandra does interact with students, it's more of the intake and like ongoing barriers to learning student support side. So I'm more of the teacher manager. I'm also an instructor. So some of the practices that we do, it's been a big focus for us this year to include digital literacy. So that does start with the CASAS assessment. And we have recently gotten a grant that gave us a whole influx of laptops that have touchscreen ability. And with that comes additional accessibility features. A lot of almost every student has a smartphone. So students are familiar with touching the screen to magnify what they need to see. And if you're using a PC, do have these, I think they're called ease of something. If you put that into your search bar on a Microsoft PC, you'll be able to access accessibility features that your students can in turn use if you do have a fully functioning laptop. I don't know how many Chromebooks have, but they include those things that I mentioned here: size of font, text to speech, color of font, closed captions. So these are things that we, on the digital side, are able to provide the students from the get-go of intake. In addition, we have classes that move online as needed, whether it's a snow day or you work in an old office building that doesn't have water or might not have power. And I also teach a class that is designated as HighFlex, which means that the teacher is in one place with a group of students, and then there's a separate group or just one student who's attending from home. We offer this just in my class. We don't want to make it something that, I mean, just because it's hard for the teacher. It involves a lot of prep time, takes a lot of energy to be equitable to both groups of students. So we kind of just treat it as a short-term solution if a student is sick or can't come into the building because of transportation. And if the student does have something that's ongoing as a procedure for us, then we do want to move that student to an online class just because it's the best of that world. Like the class is designed for remote learning, and that's probably the best solution for that student long term. So something that we have been doing is for beginner ESL classes, we do not have any of those on Zoom. We did at the beginning of the pandemic, and that teacher was literally making work packets and mailing them physically to students and teaching on a whiteboard. It was more like watching TV and having work materials at home. But we found that all of our classes, beginner classes, being in person has worked really well. It has strong retention, strong attendance, and students don't have to deal with those barriers of technology immediately. Moving to the next item, our LMS is Google Classroom, and that works for remote classes and in-person classes. So even in-person classes, you know, our textbook, a lot of it is digital. The worksheets exist as PDFs. So teachers have done things like create a Google Classroom and have all their resources consolidated and materials consolidated into one space that students can access from their phone. So that LMS works well as a way to easily communicate with all students in just one click. Also related to communication, we use Teams as an organization, and so we pay for Teams phone number, like a work number, but also at an additional cost, use Teams Messages, which is an app within the Teams software. And that allows you to communicate, or it allows you to text students from that work number. And as you know, that's the primary way students want to communicate. And for ESL learners, it's the best way to communicate, allowing them to translate whatever you send, so there's less misunderstandings. And we, as an agency, we do encourage teachers to have a direct line of communication with students. If a student support starts getting involved, in like the first week of class, if they miss the first day, we want the teacher to reach out. We don't want student support having to answer questions about what is my homework and can you send me the Zoom link again. This as a procedure has helped with the Teams messaging, and having the teacher to student direct line of communication has helped with attendance and retention in our experience this year. Okay, last item on this page. For our PIPD, we set up for all of our full-time teachers and some part-time teachers to participate in a pair course called Building Your Digital Skills. So this allowed them to reflect on their own practices and habits relating to digital skills, but then also learn more and be pushed to experiment with new digital literacy in their classroom and reflect on it. But also this course, the goal of this course is to more just not add something, not force people to start bringing computers into the classroom suddenly. A lot of teachers do just instinctually tap into digital resources. So it was more about noticing what they're already doing and then now having the skills to look at the pair skills checklist and standards and then report on it in their lesson plans in a way that makes us look good. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so another thing that touches on the intake process is that we do have a student orientation specifically for remote learners. So they learn the Zoom skills that they need and etiquette that they should have when attending a remote class, and teachers lead this. So we have about 6 full-time teachers, and it's a pretty easy sell to tell them that you're gonna teach a PowerPoint that's already been created for you, and you'll do this twice a year for about 20 minutes or 30 minutes each session. And that has taken care of a lot of the beginning roadblocks that teachers experience in the first week of class, with email addresses that don't work, not being able to sign into your email, just those essential things that remote learners need. And they learn about our Chromebook loaner program that Chandra mentioned. We also have these supplemental classes for conversation practice, for reading support at ESL level, and then a math and reading supplemental class for the ABE, ASE level. And we promote those to in-person and online students. And we promote them to in-person students with flyers that have QR codes. So that digital literacy is built in, and it's something that students can carry to real-world experience outside of the classroom. So we have a variety of those classes, and we even started before they were only online, and now we're experimenting with the in-person reading class for ESL, and there's strong attendance there. So we've made some progress with improving attendance. And then the supplemental distance learning that we use is Newsela, and I've mentioned that I teach this to my students, that there's really no reason that they can't do homework, because when I make copies, it always seems like 4 students in the class lose it. So now they have those digital skills to access their homework and take advantage of what exists on Newsela, with AI being able to read the article to them or adjust the lexile level. Last thing here that we currently do, we encourage our staff to attend the Friday webinars that exist for the digital literacy specialist or student support. All of those items are things that are encouraged for all to attend, and you might relate to certain staff members depending on the subject. Next. And I'll try to wrap this up. The future, we're looking at things that we can do moving forward. We're going to be paying, or we do pay, and we're going to be implementing CASAS Enhanced, which is an additional, maybe I think 20 or 30 cent additional cost per test that moves all of the CASAS results into a browser form. So, and you can build classes so that teachers can look at student CASAS results all in one place rather than having to navigate through the software, finding students one by one. And being able to turn that testing information into something actionable for their class. We do have North Star. I'm thinking about making that one of our supplemental classes. We're going to be having interns soon who we might try to take advantage of and see if anybody's interested in teaching or assisting with teaching. And as Chandra mentioned, we have a lot of Chromebooks. We want to make use of what we have. So we're looking at making some office hours for homework or classes where students can come into our building. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. And if DelCo staff, if you can put your email addresses, so if any of your
Sure.
colleagues in the field that may have some questions for you later on, they can email you. And I do see someone put their hand up. Gianna, you had a quick question for them?
Yes, I had a question about the Teams number. Did you say that your instructors are able to text with the learners?
Yes. So it's an additional cost, but it's an app within Teams where it opens up something that looks very much like what we're using now, but you're able to type in a phone number and send a message to that number.
Okay, that's what, because I was like, wait, we can't send text messages in Teams. It's
No.
an add-on. Okay, all right, thank you.
That's literally called Messages. That's the name of the
Thank
app.
you so much.
Thank you, DelCo staff again. And again, I see Sandra put her email. And Chris, if you can also share your email as well, thank you. And so we're going to move on to our next presenter, Seneca Highlands.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Stewart. I'm the Adult Education Coordinator for the IU9, and I'm actually joined with my coworker, Lindsay McAndrew. She is an instructor as well as our digital literacy specialist, and she will talk after this, but I'm going to start first. So the big question that we always had, obviously we know that digital literacy is important, but we're wondering how we're incorporating it. What do we incorporate? Lindsay and I actually went to Washington, D.C. a couple years ago, and we participated in the DRAW pilot, and that means digital resiliency in the American workforce. And because we work so closely with our career links, because a lot of our offices are located right in the career link, this really resonated with us, and specifically the word resilience, because I guess we never really thought about exactly what that word meant. And it's not just being familiar with something or learning it one time, one specific skill. It's are you able to keep going afterwards? If there's a problem, do you have the skills to fix it without asking questions all of the time? So in our minds, we're like, okay, how can we build these skills in our classrooms every single day? So what we did was we are thinking of how we can have students feel confident doing digital intakes, emails, resumes, internet searches, something as simple as that, job searches. And we laugh at this because we always use this phrase. We are not reinventing the wheel. We are not. We have all of our lesson plans. You don't have to scratch everything and start fresh. You're simply just adding to the already existing lessons that you have. So that was our goal. And that has been ever since we left there. It was like light bulbs went off. Our wheels were spinning when we left there. And so we've been on track for trying to change everything since then. So one of the things that we have talked about changing for years is our orientation. And Lindsay's going to talk a little bit more about that. But this year we finally did it. And we added some more digital literacy into our orientation and digital skills so that we can just see where students are at and kind of gauge them without even knowing that we're doing that. I think I'm going to let Lindsay get into some of the meat of how we use digital literacy in our classrooms.
Hi, everybody. Like Amanda said, my name is Lindsay, and I am one of the instructors for our program at the IU9. And we just wanted to share some specific ways that we are using digital literacy in the classroom and getting students hands-on experiences. So we are all blessed, each of our counties are blessed with having a smart board in our classrooms. And I can't speak for the other two, but I exclusively use my smart board to present lessons. And I know digital literacy is getting them to utilize it, but seeing me use it every day is kind of giving them some exposure to new types of digital skills and technology that's out there. I do sometimes have students come up to the board and participate with the board as well. And it is interesting to watch them because they see me use it so much that they almost don't even have any questions on how to use the technology as well. So it's almost like they're learning and they don't even know that they are. So that's kind of interesting to see when that happens. We also add a digital literacy aspect to each lesson that we write. And we have a spot in our template where we put the skill that we're going to utilize that day. And something that I have learned just, over time of teaching a lesson is sometimes these opportunities just arise naturally in the class. Sometimes you just see, or they ask a question on something and you're like, oh, let's use some technology right now to answer that question or practice that skill. I, in particular, use entry tickets, and I try to always use a digital skill. So I'm using the digital skill along with an academic skill. Again, we've taken courses, I'm sure many of you have, where you want them to know the digital literacy before they have to do an academic skill as well. You kind of want to make sure they're comfortable with using both of those things. But anyway, yeah, I like to use digital literacy with an entry ticket. One specific example that I have is just this past week. We were talking about averages.
Just a minute, Lindsay.
Okay.
Hi, there's someone who has their mic on and we can hear you talking. So everyone could double check that they're muted except for Lindsay. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. I wasn't sure how to approach that. So we were talking about averages in class, finding an average. And it kind of just clicked in my mind because weather is an easy thing to think about finding an average for. So I asked all the students to get out their smartphone, if they had one, and open their weather app. This was all me observing if they're able to do these things with ease. And I asked them to pick a location anywhere that they wanted. So I was hoping everyone would pick somewhere different. And I wanted them to find the average for the next 10 days of that location. And even the students that easily probably check the weather every day on their phone, or I could tell that they really enjoyed that activity. So even though a student might have a high level of digital literacy, just kind of sometimes those simple, for them, those simple activities creates like such a great experience or conversation afterwards. So I was excited about that little activity that I thought of. And so some of the other things that we have utilized in the class is online research projects, which is kind of, I don't know, some people might say, oh, well, that's an easy thing to think of. But even just having them look up a little bit more information about the topic that you're talking about, or finding some more evidence maybe on one specific thing you're writing about, adding some more evidence that you can find. And then that turns into a whole conversation about, are you finding reliable sources when you're using that technology? I did have another example I have is a student, we were talking about Mount Rushmore, and we had done a reading about Mount Rushmore. And the student had said to me, well, did you know there's a vault in Mount Rushmore where they keep the Declaration of Independence? And I didn't get into like whether or not I thought he was right. I just said, show me some evidence as to why you know that. And he immediately got online and looked up some things. And that's where we were making sure he's looking up some reliable sources. And we ended up having a great conversation about where the Declaration of Independence is housed and what that vault actually contains, which if you guys don't know, go check it out because that's kind of cool. It's something that I didn't know. So that was just one example of how you can kind of use it naturally as it comes up in the classroom. We also do some have done some virtual field trips with students, which, as you can imagine, that is very enriching and can create some great conversations and experiences for students. We also use Essential Education as our LMS, and typically we will save that for people to do outside of the classroom at home, but sometimes students will have some questions when they were at home. Like, I did not understand this essential ed lesson. And so I have in the past brought up that lesson, gone through it with everybody. So you can just show the video. And so students are practicing that digital literacy while using essential ed in the classroom sometimes. And so as Amanda talked about our orientation, we have decided to implement some digital literacy right into orientation. That's a good opportunity for us to observe what their skills are right before they even start classes. You can get a pretty quick idea of what they know and what they don't know when you're asking them to, get online and search some things. One thing we did want to add to this list was we also have them do a GED.com account. So we use ONET for an interest survey, and we use Essential Ed. We give them the tutorial so that they know what to do when they go home. And then, like I said, GED.com, we have them create an account right then and there during orientation. So those are just some examples of how we use digital literacy in the classroom. And there's many, many more. I know we probably could all talk about this all day with different things that we do and have done. So I will pass it back to Amanda.
Lindsay doesn't know this yet, but I'm just going to pat her on the back virtually really quick because when I was in her classroom recently, she had done her whole lesson, like she talked about, like the entry tickets and using her smart board. Well, she had a little bit of time at the end of class, and I don't know if it was like a conversation that she wanted them to research. I can't really remember those specifics, but all of a sudden she just on a whim said, okay, everyone open up your computers. And they started doing research to what they were discussing at the end of their lesson. And it just dawned on me that all of what we are doing is definitely working, because a couple years ago, she might have, or I might have, handed out a worksheet. We might not have opened up those computers and had do more research that way. We might have just like found whatever book we had or something along those lines. So I was just proud of her to see that's where our minds are going right now, rather than where they were before. So I was proud of her for that. So one of the things that we want to do moving forward is finding a new online digital literacy assessment. She talked about ONET, and that is fine. But we have been talking about, mainly Lindsay, she just keeps bringing it to our attention, and we want to try North Star. So that's our goal this year, is to find out more about that, do more research, and add that to our orientation next year. We are obviously going to make sure that we are continuing to add all the digital literacy competencies to each lesson. That is somewhat new for us, adding all of those. So my job as the coordinator, I just want to be sure that all instructors are incorporating those into their daily lessons when I check those. So Lindsay, as our digital literacy specialist, she has been presenting at our PLCs. We've added her into the PIPD plan this past year, and it has worked out wonderfully. And we would like to focus more on this certain skills. So one thing that we found when we attend conferences or do professional development online, thank you, Lori, that sounds great. We have found that when we leave professional development, we're feeling very overwhelmed sometimes. Not that it's not good information, but sometimes there's so much information that we leave there and we're like, okay, we have this amazing list. Where do we start? And then sometimes we don't end up using any of it. So we've talked in our agency that we want to focus on one specific new digital literacy strategy at a time. So whether it be Padlet, we want to learn all the things about Padlet and how we can put that into our daily lessons. Or like even if Lindsay wanted to give us a lesson on the smartboard. How can we do those in our lessons all the time? But we want that time spent just on the smartboard, or just on, like, I know Jamboard isn't a thing anymore, but like just like that. I want to learn one specific skill that I know for sure that I will go back into our classrooms and we will use all the time. So that is what we want to do moving forward. Also, one last thing is, Lindsay took, and I think another one of our instructors took one of the classes on the portal. We want to all do that. So we want to make sure that we are constantly using that PD portal for all of our professional development and adding that to our list as well. I think that that's all. Oh, one more thing. I just wanted to go back to that virtual field trip that Lindsay was talking about. If you have not done those, I don't have a specific site to provide to anyone, but you literally could just Google it. I've done like something with museums, but my favorite one ever was, I did the Amazon Fulfillment Center, and it went along with our workforce skills and things like that, but it was able to tour the facility. It would stop it. It would ask questions. It was very interactive for our students, and they were able to see like what manufacturing looks like and things like that. So if you haven't tried virtual field trips, definitely do that. They're so awesome. I think that that's all I have to say, unless Lindsay, you have anything to add.
So I totally skipped over the competencies. I apologize on my slide.
That's okay.
I just wanted to say we have looked at those competencies, and we try to think about how we can use those in each lesson, an existing lesson. So we're not trying to plan a whole new digital literacy lesson. And one thing I really like is at the end, the appendix, the fundamentals competencies give you very specific skills and examples of something that you can just put right in to a lesson. Almost, I mean, you could practice maybe not a different one every class, but there's a lot of good ones in there. So that competency is, the teacher competency is on the PD portal, if anyone is not familiar. And that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. Great information shared. And if you both can put your email addresses in the chat, that will be great. And we're going to move on to our last presenter, Lincoln IU 12. Sharon, you are on mute.
Thought it would switch over. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sharon Hagenberger. I'm the supervisor of adult education for Lincoln IU 12. We cover 3 counties, York, Adams, and Franklin counties. My presentation's a little bit different because we have done all the things that my previous presenters have incorporated into teaching, but I never had enough pieces of equipment to really do some new things with our students. And I also wanted to give people a chance to apply for the second round of this laptop grant. There are a number of agencies I know that have won free laptops from what's it called? The Digital Connectivity Technology Program, and through DCED, which is the Department of Community and Economic Development. So they had a grant application for just strictly new laptops. And so we applied back in the fall, and were notified in December that our bid for 100 new laptops was accepted. And so in January, we received 100 brand new HP 13-inch Elite books that have, as someone previously said, that have touchscreen capability. And they are also able to be folded over and capable of switching the tablet mode. The value of each one is around $2,900 is what the grant has valued each of these laptops at. So it was a considerable award getting 100 of them. Now, what I wanted everyone to know is a couple things that I learned along the way about getting these laptops and what they're going to do for our digital literacy programs in the future. So I'll let you switch the slide. So one of the things that we had to do in the laptop grant was to decide what we were going to put where. The IU Technology Division, if you're familiar with IUs, you know that we have multiple divisions, special ed being usually the largest division in an IU. But then we have a technology division, a student services division, a educational services division, a business services. We have all these different divisions and heads of those programs. And for IU 12, we have around 1,200 employees. So the tech division covers a lot of employees. And prior to this grant, we were never allowed to apply for laptops like this, with the idea that we could loan them out to students. If we, under this grant, we can do that. And tech finally agreed that they would let us do that. So, but in learning about the type of laptops they gave us and learning about the value of the laptops and worrying about whether things are going to disappear over time. And part of the grant is if you lose a laptop that somebody, doesn't return it or something, then your agency has to replace it. So what we did in this new laptop grant is we took a look at all of our locations and said, okay, I haven't been able to have very big labs in any of my locations up to this point, so that we couldn't do online orientations or online assessments very easily. We couldn't loan out laptops very easily to our students, even when they're in our class area. So by applying for this grant, this opportunity has given us a huge chance to change all of those things. So you can see, I do, as I said, I cover 3 counties, and I have literacy councils, 2 that we run, one in Franklin County, one in Adams County, and then we subcontract with the York Literacy Institute here in York, used to be York County Literacy Council. And then I have some other centers, like our York Adult Learning Center is on Beaver Street in York City, and that we have ABE, ASE, and ESL classes there. And then my other subcontractee is Waynesboro, and then we have a classroom at the Career Link in Franklin County. So we're going to be sending out, our tech division has already been imaging all of our laptops that we received. And so we'll be deploying this laptops out like that. I am keeping 10 in reserve. There are some students who have proven to us that they are trustworthy. And so there's an opportunity for them to actually try out and sort of be our pilot for borrowing the laptops to take and use from home and so on. So that's what we're doing with our 100 laptops. Next slide, please. So one of the things I learned, even at the IU, I knew there was going to be a price for getting the laptops ready. The laptops include the actual laptop. It does not include a mouse. It does not include software. It has the Microsoft platform on it, the Microsoft 365 and so on, that it comes with. But any software you have to add. Now, if you're a small agency and you subcontract that out to someone, then you probably have a few certain things that you always put on it. But because I work for an IU, they're very into security and monitoring and those kinds of things. So one of the things I wasn't expecting was to have a yearly budget item for putting these items on each of the 100 laptops. So this is just to give you a heads up those of you, because I can't say it's a deterrent to apply, but it is something to think about when you're applying for the laptops. Fortunately, we were able to work it into the budget. So these are the things that IU 12 requires put on every laptop. The other thing I failed to actually know is that when we purchase new laptop systems for our staff at the IU, we pay this $59.66 per user one time for the Microsoft software. What we found out is that because these laptops are not for employees, tech will not absorb that fee the rest of the 3 years that we have to have these. So I have to budget this amount or something similar to it, depending on how things go up, each of our next 3 years, so that our laptops are kept in good shape and safe and everything for our students, which, considering that's the price of 3 laptops, I don't think that's too bad of a deal when you kind of round it out that way. So, but I wanted to give those of you who are applying for the second round something to think about, that make sure that you budget and think about what you're going to have to put on them. The other thing I've had to do, and you can move the next slide, please, is also make sure I have all of the equipment that goes with it. Because as I said, you get the laptops, which are phenomenal. Really, they're beautiful. And they have all the things students need for 21st century learning. But these are the things I've also had to, now these I knew and I budgeted for when I applied for the grant, because you have to have a place to charge the laptops and lock them up each night. And then I went with wired mice because I didn't want to have to deal with battery powered mice, and those are much easier to walk away from our labs and so on. And then, so that students can work privately, we have the headsets that we ordered through the IU, and they're smaller ones. But I have one site that has an open classroom that would be open and going on while the students can work in our labs, sort of that drop-in lab type thing that one of the other agencies talked about. So for that one, I'm buying noise canceling, or have purchased noise canceling headsets so that students can work. The other thing we added was the North Star software. So it's definitely something that we're able to work on now with each of our students with all of these laptops that we couldn't do before. The only other thing that kind of caught me by surprise was my Comcast signal, because I lease buildings out in the other counties. We have to have special radio attachments for Comcast so that the IU can control our desk phones and our copier and provide our Wi-Fi and so on, but it's through Comcast. And so because of bringing in extra laptops now in a couple of our locations, I had to boost our signal, which cost me a little bit more per month. So that's another cost I hadn't thought about, but I'm sharing with you so you can think about it through Business Comcast or through your IU, those kinds of things, because we are starting to run in with all of our classes doing high flex in the one site, especially when our case manager would put students on the laptops to do CASAS exams and so on. It was pulling too much bandwidth. So we had to increase the bandwidth that was out there for our students. So that's another piece you want to think about if you go for the laptop grants, or if you have them now and hadn't thought about that. That's something that you'll want to think about. And then, of course, I've gone strictly to CASAS for reading, CASAS Goals Math 2, and the CASAS ESL update, the most recent exams. So, and I've talked about that before in another presentation, but our case managers are loving being able to give the assessments online, and the students get to use the new laptops and all of those things. So, but I had budgeted for tickets for that. Next slide, please. So what the grant, part of the grant is there are certain things you are required to do. And so if you look at the fourth bullet, you don't have to do Skills Up with your students under this new laptop grant, but they give you free accounts for every laptop. So in other words, I have 100 Skills Up accounts, and we've already been provided training from Skills Up people through Dr. Perry with our DCED and DCPT people. And so we now know how to use the Skills Up software as a staff, and we will be offering accounts to every student. And then we're also tying that in with our partners at the Career Links because they have Skills Up also. And so what we want to do is kind of work out a system between us and them so that we give them an account or they get their account from the Career Link, but we kind of cross feed between the two to make sure students are using all of the great tools that are on Skills Up for jobs, learning about jobs, career pathways, all of those cool things. So that was provided free to us through the laptop grant. The other thing that we have to do for this laptop grant is we have to do some training of our students in how to access healthcare, how to do online visits with their doctors, how to access their accounts to see their blood work and things like that. So that's something you have to do as part of your planning in the future for what you're going to do with digital literacy with this. And then the last part is, of course, some financial literacy. And we will be working with, and we've been working with local banks in our different counties to provide. They have people that can come in and help talk to our students and go through it. But now with all the laptops, they can actually do it with the students on a laptop, which we couldn't do before. They could just kind of like show it. But it's, as you all know, it's much better when you get your fingers on it and you actually do it. The other things that we are doing now internally, now that we have the laptops, is, as I said, we've switched to CASAS assessments at all our locations. Now, if a student has a special need and can only do it on paper, then we do have the paper ones. But we've done the enhanced CASAS tickets, like one of our predecessors talked about, where for 20 or 30 cents more, you get all kinds of great reports back. You get more detailed information of what the students struggled with in the assessments, what they didn't, where their strengths are, and that can be shared directly then with the instructors. Case managers can see it. It's just a really nice, smooth connection with the CASAS assessments, and having the laptops now to really put a group of students in at the same time. If we had more than like 4 in an orientation, we couldn't do all the laptops. Now we can with this laptop grant. The other thing we're using, because we want to make sure our students are understanding how to fully use the laptops, we are going to use the North Star curriculum instruction again. And the best part is I have a digital literacy specialist now who is going to focus on helping our students with all of their online digital work. And so they're going to actually be moving in with the teachers throughout the program year, doing sessions with our classroom teachers. Because prior to this, all of our digital work was embedded in the classroom, and you were kind of at the mercy of the capabilities of the instructor. Whereas now we can guarantee they're all going to get the same training. They're all going to get the same prep during orientations. They're all going to be ready for remote and high flex learning. And it's the best piece that could have happened, along with getting all of these laptops. So my piece was a little different. I hope if you haven't thought about applying for the laptops, I would say it's definitely worth it, but be aware think about those few things that you have to budget for. But I would never have the funding to buy even 10 of those laptops, as I have enough trouble replacing laptops for my staff, let alone, have all of these fabulous pieces of equipment for all of our sites now. So if you haven't considered it, consider it for the second round. And if you have any questions or information, here's my email address and my phone number. And I'll be glad to help anyone. Or if you have a laptop grant already and you want somebody to, talk things with and partner with, I've already had another agency say, hey, can we get together and see what you're doing and so on. Please give me a call. We're excited about this, and I hope you take advantage of these new tools, because it's a fabulous opportunity. So thank you, everyone.
Excellent. Thank you, Sharon, and thank you to all of our presenters for sharing such great pieces of information. Sharon's information is up there, and the other presenters' information is in the chat. And I am going to go ahead and turn it back over to Amanda.
Thank you. And yeah, the grant that Sharon talked about is the digital connectivity one. I think I've sent at least one, if not two, emails about it. So, okay. So my next several slides are reminders about things. I know we've only got 3 minutes. I will try to be quick. If you need to log off at 12, of course, that's fine. So I would like to start by kind of reminding everyone about the post-secondary enrollment verification forms. For the national reporting system, so for our federal reporting, enrollment in post-secondary education or training plays a role in a couple of our outcomes. So one, it can be considered a measurable skill gain. So if a student enrolls in your program and then at some point during the program year, because of course measurable skill gain is during the program year, if the student during the program year enrolls in either post-secondary education or training, that can be an educational functioning level gain for the purposes of federal reporting. Now, if the person has already shown an EFL gain based on pre-post testing, the transition to post-secondary education is not an additional educational functioning level gain. It's students only have one per period of participation. But it is one way for a student to show EFL gain is by enrolling in post-secondary education or training. The other one where it's very important, because there's kind of not as much alternative, is for the credential attainment outcome. So there are two parts to our federal credential attainment outcome. One part is attainment of the post-secondary credential, which does not apply to the majority of our students. But the other part is the secondary credential, or the high school equivalency credential. And for federal reporting purposes, a person is successful in earning the high school equivalency credential. We can only count them if, in addition to earning that credential, they are employed or in post-secondary education or training within 1 year after exit. So, it is true that many of our students probably are showing up in the employment data match that we do with L&I. And so earning the high school equivalency credential, we might be able to count them because they're employed. But another option is for them to be in post-secondary education or training. Now, we do a data match with the National Student Clearinghouse, but there is a lot of post-secondary education and especially a lot of training that is not reported to the National Student Clearinghouse. So we do ask that you, if you have students who are transitioning to post-secondary education or training, that you, if at all possible, get this post-secondary enrollment verification form and submit it. We did, so one, the form itself is available either in policy C-135, it's at the very end of the policy, or you can create the form from eData in the adult record. And in that case, it actually, the eData fills in some of the data elements for you, like the student numbers and things like that. We do have a change in how we're asking you to submit those to us. In the past, we asked you to mail them to us. We are doing something called hoteling at PDE now, which means we do not have dedicated spaces in our office. And therefore, we don't really have anywhere to keep the documents. So we are now asking you to scan and email the signed forms to us, to our resource account. I sent an email out about that a couple weeks ago. So that is one change. Please don't mail them, scan and email. But we do ask that you do your best to get them. I would say especially those of you who are within a post-secondary entity. You probably have students who are going on into other parts of your entity. They may not be credit-bearing courses. They might be training, but we would really ask that you try to track that and get documentation. What I would say is don't worry too much. We're not going to ask you to try and figure out, oh, is the division going to be able to use this post-secondary form for what I think I'm collecting it for? If you get it and submit it to us, we will do the analysis to figure out if it's something that we can use or not. So please get them and submit them. And if we can use them, that's great. If we don't, we still know that you had an outcome for this student, right? We can see that your program supported this individual to move on. Okay. This is just a reminder for those of you who use TABE 11-12 and are transitioning to 13-14. You should have gotten an email from DRC, which is the vendor, the publisher, back on April 8th. That has a link on how you can convert online TABE 11-12 licenses to TABE 13-14. So this is just some information about that. I do want to remind you that if you gave a student an 11-12 as a pretest, which, I'm sure you did if your student started prior to probably around February or March, they had that as the pretest. You do need to post-test them with an 11-12. You cannot post-test with 13-14 for an 11-12. And then 11-12 will no longer be accepted after June 30th. Of this year, so I do want to make sure you convert any remaining 11-12s that you have to 13-14. And DRC TABE has the information for you. Some data reminders. In looking at the access template, it appears that programs are not necessarily entering all staff who work on your programs into eData. You're very good, obviously, at entering teachers and tutors who are doing the teaching because you have to tie them to the classes. But we are required under NRS to report these 4 categories. We have to report the number of full-time, part-time, and volunteer, local administrative, supervisory, and ancillary staff. Ancillary, sorry, mispronounced that. Local counselors, local paraprofessionals, and local teachers. We have to report those numbers. I know those names sound a little weird, and I know that in eData, eData, we created it back in 2008. So some of the roles that are listed in eData don't necessarily match with what words we're using now. So for administrators, it might be administrator, coordinator are the two roles in eData. For counselors in eData, that would be either case manager or counselor. You likely call them student support specialists, student support coordinators. I know you have lots of different terminologies for that locally that is more meaningful to your program, but within eData, you would enter those people as case managers or counselors. And the slide contains other kind of guidance. I recognize that in eData, you can only enter one role or one position, and that many staff members have multiple roles. So it really is, what is their primary position? So you may have someone who is a student support specialist who also does data entry, but their main role is student support specialist. So you would select either case manager or counselor for them. But please, please make sure you're entering all of the staff who are working on your adult ed program, whether they're paid with grant funds, or if you support them with local funds, that's fine. Or if they're volunteer, all of those we report in our federal reporting. This is just asking everybody to kind of double check your data. We have approximately, as of mid-March, we had approximately 1,000 adults who are showing up as having US-based schooling with the highest grade completed of high school equivalency or high school diploma or higher. There are two concerns. It's not necessarily wrong, but there are two concerns. One of those people, 57, have US-based schooling, high school diploma or higher, and their entry level is level 6. Those individuals really are not eligible for our programs, right? Because to be eligible, they have to be basic skills deficient, which is defined as testing below the 9th grade level. They have to not have a high school diploma or its equivalent, or they have to be English language learners. So if somebody has US-based schooling with a high school diploma or higher and they're testing at level 6, they probably don't need our programming, and so they really shouldn't be in it. The other concern is we had 267 who were showing up as US-based schooling, high school diploma or higher, who are in ESL classes. Maybe that's correct, but I would ask you to look at your data to see if you have any students who are doing that, who have that US-based and ESL, and double check to make sure that the entry is correct. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying, please double check your data to see if it is in fact entered correctly. And finally, probably the thing everybody's most interested in, 25-26 continuation grants. Of course, these are the 4 grants that are continuation for next year. I need to stress, this is all preliminary, contingent on many different things. So at this point, we are anticipating level funding programs with this year's funding. So what you got this year in your grant, we're anticipating, at least initially, providing you for next year. The grant amounts have to be approved by my administration, and that has not happened yet. So there could be changes based on input from people above. And as always, it is contingent on availability of federal and state funds. So if our federal or state funds get cut any, then your grants will have to be cut. It is also contingent on passage of the state budget. So as a reminder, in Pennsylvania, the state budget is what appropriates our federal funds to us. So the state budget says how much federal funding we can use in addition to the availability of the state line item. So until the state budget is passed, we don't release any funds. So just, I need to let you all know that while our timeline is to hopefully get approval for the tentative amounts by early May so that we can open the grants in May, have you submit them by early June so that we can begin processing them. Even if everything works out and all of the funding is available to us, they will not be processed until the budget is signed. And it is all based on availability of funds. And I have not heard anything about federal funds. What I will say is while the governor submitted his proposed budget with an increase for the adult ed line item, the budget that was introduced, the budget bill that was introduced in the state legislature has level funding. But that is the timeline that I'm hoping for. And that is it. If there are any questions, I can take them. Otherwise, thank you very much to those of you who stayed on. I appreciate it and have a good afternoon.
You as well.